The tourist grabbed the guard's jacket, confident he could do whatever he wanted. But one swift move from the hero left the crowd, frozen in shock. What happened next was unforgettable. Morning in central London was, as it often is, both beautiful and slightly exhausting. The gray sky, a reflection of the city's centuries-old history, hung low over Buckingham Palace. The wet cobblestones glistened after the night's rain, and the square in front of the gates was already filled with tourists. The sounds of footsteps, camera flashes, and children's laughter blended into a chaotic hum. Just another ordinary day in this part of the city. Standing at his post was James Hudson, a 28-year-old royal guard who, over the years, had become a living statue of tradition and honor. His red uniform, impeccably pressed, gleamed like a symbol of the monarchy's grandeur. The towering bearskin hat added to his majestic appearance, while his rigid stillness was a feat of discipline no one in the crowd could truly appreciate. James knew one thing. His duty was to be a paragon of endurance and composure. But alas, not everyone valued this greatness. Among the crowd stood out a tall, heavy-set man in his 40s. His face, bright red from alcohol and arrogance, seemed to mock everything resembling dignity. He wore a t-shirt emblazoned with "I am the King," a self-proclaimed title meant to underscore his status. Union Jack shorts and sandals completed his absurd outfit, making him look like a walking parody of a tourist. A beer can dangled from his hand, and his staggered yet confident gait screamed one thing. This man believed the world revolved around him, and, of course, he found his target. "Hey, you soldier boy," he bellowed, directing his attention to James. "Smile, you're working for me." Let's pause for a moment. You feel it, don't you? That second-hand embarrassment for a man who clearly thinks his tourist status grants him the right to do whatever he pleases. Who acts like this? The crowd buzzed with excitement. Some people laughed, others pulled out their phones, eager to capture the moment when the guard might break. But James didn't flinch. His stony eyes stared into infinity, unyielding. The man moved closer, his voice now cutting through the chatter. "Come on, look at me. I'm amazing. Let's take a picture. I'll wear your hat, and you'll smile," he shouted, swinging his beer can as if it were a trophy. The crowd laughed louder. Someone called out, "Go on, show him how it's done, mate," while others murmured, "This is too much." James remained still, like a statue, as though nothing was happening. But inside, every word this man uttered rang like a challenge to everything James stood for. He knew he couldn't respond. His duty was to stay calm. But honestly, who could? Unperturbed by the lack of reaction, the man stepped even closer. Now he was nearly touching James. The crowd suddenly went quiet, as if holding its breath. Even the sounds of children and camera clicks faded into silence when the man with the beer crossed the line. Yes, that line, the one that clearly marked, "Do not cross." But to him, it was just another barrier to step over, like so many others in his life. With a broad grin that was meant to convey confidence but looked more like a drunken smirk, he leaned toward James and spoke loudly, drawing out his words like he was talking to a child. "All right, soldier boy, hand over your jacket. I told you I need it. I'll be the royal guard now." He reached out and grabbed the edge of James's scarlet jacket. His fingers, greasy and damp from sweat and beer, clumsily tugged at the fabric. The crowd gasped. It was as if even a random tourist's camera froze, recording the moment in stunned silence. And then, something happened that no one expected. James, who had seemed as if he were carved from marble, suddenly stepped forward. The movement was so swift and precise that the man recoiled, dropping his trophy. Shock registered in his eyes, quickly followed by confusion. Then he heard it, a voice as cold as the London winter wind. "Sir, Step back immediately." It was the first word the guard had spoken all day, but it carried so much authority that even the onlookers felt a twinge of guilt for their own past misdeeds. The tourist, however, wasn't one to back down easily. Shaking off the initial shock, he doubled down. "Oh, so now you're giving me orders," he yelled, his face turning an even deeper shade of red. "I'm a tourist. I'm paying to see you guys. I'm a free man, you hear? Free!" He waved the beer can like a scepter of power, brandishing it in front of James's face. James remained unmoved, his eyes fixed straight ahead, gazing into eternity. It was the look of a man who understood all too well the gulf between himself and the shameless creature before him. And then something unexpected happened. From the crowd emerged an elderly man, leaning on a cane. His posture was upright, his face firm despite the deep lines of age. His outfit, though not as striking as James's uniform, clearly indicated that he was a veteran of World War II. The man stepped forward, his voice steady yet commanding as he broke the tense silence. "Young man, you're disgracing our country and insulting its traditions." The words sliced through the air like a blade. A few people in the crowd nodded in agreement, whispering amongst themselves. The tourist, however, scoffed loudly. "Grandpa, are you serious? Real men don't care about your old traditions," he jeered. "This is what fun looks like." The crowd sighed collectively. Phones continued recording, and it felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Everything happened so quickly that the crowd barely had time to process the shift unfolding before their eyes. James, who had until now seemed like an immovable statue, broke protocol for the first time. Slowly, almost ceremoniously, he turned his head toward the veteran and gave a slight nod. Though a small gesture, it was filled with a respect that was impossible to overlook. And then came the moment that would be etched into the memory of everyone in the square. James carefully drew his saber from its scabbard. The blade gleamed in the dim morning light, and in that instant, time seemed to stand still. The saber, previously just another part of the guard's uniform, suddenly became a symbol of honor and protection. "Seriously, a saber?" Someone in the crowd whispered with a nervous chuckle. But the air was thick with tension. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if not to disturb the gravity of the moment. James stepped forward, positioning himself between the tourist and the veteran. It was as though he had built an invisible wall that could no longer be breached. His movements were precise, almost like a dancer's, yet carried a weight of authority that was undeniable. The crowd gasped. Those in the front rows instinctively stepped back, too awed to even move otherwise. The tourist, who seconds ago had felt like a king, suddenly turned pale. His hand holding the beer can trembled, and his confidence evaporated. He began to back away, but his pride wouldn't let him leave quietly. Clinging to the last scraps of his dignity, he tried to justify his behavior. "Hey, what's the deal? Can't you take a joke? I'm just having fun. You're supposed to entertain us. I'm paying for this. Get out of here before you embarrass yourself even more," someone from the back shouted. "You're a disgrace," another voice added. These words echoed across the square. People started to chime in, and then, for the first time, applause broke out. At first, it was scattered and hesitant, but it quickly grew. The crowd began chanting, "Honor to the guard, well done." James, meanwhile, remained completely composed. His voice, low and steady, silenced the applause. "Sir, leave this area, or you will be escorted out." There was such firmness and coldness in his tone that even the spectators felt a shiver down their spines. The tourist, now as red as a boiled lobster, darted his eyes from James to the crowd. Realizing his audience was no longer on his side, he flung the beer can to the ground, turned on his heel, and shoved his way through the onlookers as he fled the square. "Good riddance," someone muttered as he disappeared. As the tourist vanished into the crowd, the square fell silent once again. Then the applause erupted. People clapped, whistled, and captured every moment on their phones. Someone shouted, "James, you're a hero!" The veteran stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it on James's shoulder. "Well done, son. You're a true hero," he said softly. His voice carried more than mere approval. It was a declaration. Without saying a word, James carefully slid his saber back into its scabbard. He adjusted his jacket as though nothing had happened, then resumed his position. His face returned to its stoic expression, as if the entire scene had left no mark on him. But for everyone in the square, he was no longer just a royal guard. James had become a symbol of honor, resilience, and the enduring relevance of tradition. The video of the incident spread rapidly across social media. The tourist, soon dubbed the King of Shame, became the subject of widespread ridicule. And James became the hero of the day, a reminder that even in the modern world, there are still those who remain steadfast in their duty and loyalty. As the crowd slowly dispersed, people continued to talk excitedly, marveling at what they had witnessed. James, however, stood at his post, as guards had for centuries before him, unwavering and majestic.